you want different results, you can't keep on doing the same thing that you've been doing all your life. Even when someone says something destructive, there's still some elements that if they hit you hard enough, then potentially there's some element of truth in what this person would be saying.
Welcome, Kurt.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you for having me.
No, thanks for coming on. It's a big honor to have you on, and I hope you will enjoy this conversation as much as we enjoyed preparing for it.
Yeah, to be fair, this is my second podcast.
Okay.
I've never like this one and another one that I've done a few weeks ago, and the other one was done in a radio station environment, so it didn't feel like a podcast.
Okay.
So this is the first one.
You're in the cinema now.
Exactly. How cool is that?
Oh, it's awesome, and I wish to have you back when we have our full podcast studio as well, which we're working on. Well, we're not working on right now, which we will start working on when we can.
Let's see how this one goes.
Let's see how this one. I'm sure
it's like when you go on a first date and you're you're already excited for the second date.
Yes. I am definitely the guy that's excited for the second date, which is exactly who I am. I'm always. My girlfriend said, you're always thinking about what's going to happen in the future. You don't even enjoy what's actually going on right now, which is exactly
I can relate to that a lot.
I am just like that.
I used to be able to relate to that a lot, actually. But I guess in the last year, I've really learned to be more focused on the present. I plan for the future. Yes, I know what I want, and I do like timeline exercises. But I've really learned through awareness to be more focused on the present.
It's hard, and I think I'm getting better at it as I get older, which is the same, just enjoy this moment, like we're out in the park or whatever, or we're on a holiday.
Yes.
Just don't think about work, don't think about what you have to do when you get back.
Yes.
Just try and relax, but still very, very hard. Like the natural state.
I guess it's hard if you decide that it's hard. And our society and social media and all that, it doesn't help. The truth is that you'd be on holiday or you're getting a massage you're at the spa, you're scrolling and you're seeing the next best thing, and you've already moved on from the thing that you are enjoying right now.
It's true. I think it is maybe not directly, but definitely causing a lot of overthinking and kind of that instant gratification of what's next?
Yes.
We're becoming way too fickle as a society. But before we get into societies, I want to get to know about you and who you are, because I'm pretty sure that most of our audience will know who you are, or at least have seen your face somewhere in Malta, but I really want to get to know you. Which is the reason why I want you to hear, to get to know you and how you got to a state where you are so successful and where you are at right now. So my first question is, tell us, or rather than a question, is more of a leading statement. Tell us who Kurt is. Who are you? Okay,
so how long is this show?
You can, as long as we will it.
Okay, I like that answer. So I'm from Hamrun. I'm the eldest of 3 boys. My dad used to be a goalkeeper for Hamrun.
Okay.
And a driving instructor. The oldest, not my dad, the family, we have the oldest running motoring school in Malta.
Okay.
My mom is the 6th out of 7 brothers and sisters, again from Hamrun. Very humble family. I would say we were a typical 90s family.
I know what that means.
Mushroom hair.
Yeah. or when you just had the fringe.
My mom never let us do that.
No, we had that as well.
We used to watch cartoons in Italian, even though we didn't understand Italian. We would be psyched when a friend of ours had cable, because we could watch Cartoon Network, so we can actually understand what we're watching.
The good old days.
Yes. There were times where financially there were some struggles, where you'd open the drawer and you don't find biscuits, and we never went on a family holiday. But at the same time, my parents sacrificed a lot so that they could send us to a private school. At the time, there was this mentality that a private school potentially could give you. I'm not going to debate whether this is a good
I was going to ask you the question. I'm not going to get into it.
I'm not going to get into it. But there was this mentality where, if you can afford to send your children to private schools, potentially there will be more opportunities. It did help a lot with my English articulation, because the school I used to go to was English speaking, and actually as a kid I could express myself in English a lot more than I could do in Maltese. By time, obviously, I became bilingual and all that. Why am I saying all this? Because at a point in my life, when Kevin was born, my youngest brother, then it became 3 boys, and to send 3 boys, three children to a private school for a middle-class family was
challenge,
a stretch, potentially impossible. So my parents made a very difficult decision back then to take me and my brother out of a private school and sent us to a church school. Again, nothing wrong with a church school or a government school, but it was a huge shift, big change. And at that age, I remember I was so upset. It triggered something in me. When I remember my dad, he took me for a car ride, and I felt that there was something he was trying to tell me, even though I was so young. And I remember exactly where we were.
How old were you?
I was 9 at the time.
Okay.
There is this chapel in San Paul Tarja, in Nashar.
Oh, I know which one.
Just uphill from Villarigo. And we were exactly there, like when we were driving, when he told me, he said, Kurt, unfortunately, Mama and I took a very difficult decision, but we just can't afford to send you and Kyle anymore to the school. And we've spoken to someone. We've been very lucky to have been given the opportunity to go to a church school. And I remember I was destroyed. Without going into too much details, I feel like it triggered something in me, because I tried to adapt to the new school. When you're a kid, you're set in your ways. It's hard. So many changes. And in relation to a lot of changes that a lot of children have in modern families, I feel like it's not that much of a big deal. But it was a change, like different, children. I wasn't anymore with my classmates.
Yes, at night.
Different uniform, different time. That we used to wake up a bit later to go to school. This one was very early. So there was this whole part of my childhood that set me on a journey of of curiosity, I would say, comparing the benefits and disadvantages, I would say, of a church school, of a private school, and all that. And it just got me curious, I don't know, I went through this whole, I'm really shortening the story, by the way.
No.
Into a lot of detail, but I just find that along the years, I went through a journey of discovery, what do I want to do in my life? I wanted to be a chef, and music was like this thing that, everyone would tell me, listen, music is a hobby. You can't make a living from music. You can't, but a chef, yes, a chef. You can be...
Get to work all the hours in the world.
Exactly. And I remember I loved to cook from a very young age. And, I studied to be a chef. So I went to ITS.
Okay.
I went through the whole exams and buying my first chef jacket. And I worked at some of the most prestigious places in Malta at the time. As a student chef, I worked at Avenue, I worked at Hard Rock Cafe. And then at the same time, when I was at Hard Rock, ITS had given all the students an opportunity to do a work placement one night at a gala dinner at Intercontinental.
Right.
And I, obviously, being someone who wanted to be in the scene, and we're talking about catering here. Obviously I signed up for it. I went, I was chosen, and I was one of like 500 chefs, student chefs, helping in this gala dinner. There was someone there from Phoenicia who was doing a part-time gig there, and he asked me, he was impressed apparently by how I was working, and he asked me to come do an interview at Phoenicia. He said, but the condition is you have to stop the other jobs, like you have to be focused at Phoenicia only, because Phoenicia, especially at the time, was very, like everything was plated. There was no buffet at the time, where buffet was everywhere, so it was all plated, all very delicate. Yes.
Intercontinental had buffet at the time.
Yes, Intercontinental at the time had many restaurants.
Actually, I worked in all of them.
Yes. But obviously the buffet was in a hotel that huge. You'd have the buffet. You'd have like I don't know how many. I got lost in the kitchens.
Yes.
But then at Phoenicia, I remember it's one huge kitchen, but like the brigade was all there, and like everyone knows each other.
You know your place.
Your place, and it's like at the time the head chef at Phoenicia was Victor Borch, who is one of a few chefs, Maltese chefs, who has a Michelin star. And I got to learn so much from this guy, because he was very meticulous. He was a walking encyclopedia. It was the first time I learned how to make fresh pasta properly was under his supervision.
How cool it is to me. I've tried it. On that topic, I've tried it. I got the machine for my birthday, I think. And I spent 4 hours. And I made it, and I made like really good pasta. But in 4 hours, I made enough portions for me, for my family. I was like, this is not worth it. I'm not doing this again. The kitchen was like literally covered in flour, so no.
There's a side note. There's a technique when you're making fresh pasta at home where it's like, listen, you have to dedicate a day.
Yes.
And you're going to make a lot, and you're going to freeze, and then you'll have stored for other days. Because since your kitchen is going to be a mountain anyway, might as well do it once. And
that's good advice. I would, like, if I had to do it again, that's what I would do.
Yes, that would be really good, because I let you buy the ingredients, you do all the prep, and then it's like when you're doing the pasta.
Then you clean after.
Yes, definitely. But you can make it into a family.
Yes, an event too, man.
So anyway, so why am I mentioning all this? Because again, at some point, I remember during Phoenicia, I was asked, I used to talk a lot about music anyway. I used to love singing. The morning meeting in the kitchen was me singing first, and then we do the briefing of the day. Like I do a song just to brighten people's spirits. And I remember once there was at the time Sammy Gallia, who is no longer with us today, but he was a resident pianist at the hotel.
Okay.
And like the head chef Victor Borch told him that I'm a singer, and Sammy asked me to sing with him once in the hotel, and he was like, like I like your voice. I think you should do more with your voice. And I was like really chuffed by it. I was like really, but I was like, I'm starting to be a chef, and in my head, with music, you can't make a living and all that. And then Victor, Chef Victor, told me, Kurt, like, you have a really good voice, and I think it would be a waste if you don't explore your options as a singer. You can always return to catering at any time. You're good. You're qualified. You have a passion for food. Said, but as a singer, there's only a certain age that you can make your mark. But as a chef, you could be in your 50s, and if you create a concept that works, So it's like he told me, first focus on, I would say at this age, focus on your music. So I remember speaking to my parents about it, and they were worried, to say the least, because I had a promising career, and I was leaving it for my career in music. And at the time I was studying with Brian Chefai, Maestro Chefai, and he actually called my dad up to send me to study in a conservatorio in Milan, classic music. And that's when my dad kind of realized that there's something there. Mm-hmm. There's something that we're not sure what it is yet, but it's not just I want to be a singer. Let's be like 1,000, another I don't know, like 1,000 people want to sing. I didn't go to the conservatory in Milan because it was a classical, like opera and stuff like that. I had studied opera for a while studying to be a chef. At the time when you're 16, your brain can take it.
Yes, for sure.
Like a whole lifetime ago.
16. To be 16 again.
I know, right? And I don't know, like at some point, how the timeline exactly was, but I stopped working as a chef, and I started working. I just found a job in an office during the day, just so that I have an income, and I was studying at night. And then there was an opportunity to go live in London and work for Ryanair. Bear in mind, I was 18 at the time. And I applied, I got the job, I did the training, and I moved to London at 19.
Wow.
Like big changes, right? So I was saying at 16, I started to be a chef. I did my training, I got qualified, decided to stop. And
so how did that feel? Being a 19-year-old Maltese man / young boy, whatever, 19 is hardly, you know. How did it feel going from, and you'll get this if you've worked abroad or lived abroad, going from island mentality, because Malta, everyone's, we have our own personality, which is something to be very proud of. But then you move to London, which is multinational. It's a melting pot of nationalities.
Yes.
It's London. It's fast, fast paced. It's big. It's a city. It's a renowned city. So walk me through, like, how, if you remember, obviously, how you felt.
I remember very well
when you started.
I mean, at the time, I looked at it as an adventure. Every time there were these little milestones where I got the call from Ryanair that I got accepted to do the training. I started the training. I was doing well in the exams and all that, and it was fun. We're a good group of friends of the classroom where everyone wanted to party and have a good time. So I was like, okay, so we're gonna have a good time for sure. Like everybody goes with a hangover for the training, but it's like you're 19, it's fine, classical. It works. The day that finally arrived when I had everything packed, I remember was 1st June 2008. That's how well I remember the date. It hit me like I was leaving the nest, like I'm 19, I'm the eldest of 3 boys, I'm in Cameroon, like this. I was brought up with my family, my cousins, my grandparents, all of them were still alive at the time. And I'm leaving the nest to go to a huge place that I didn't know anyone from. I didn't know anyone from the UK at the time. And I remember packing the last few things. I had this bottle of perfume. And I knew that I couldn't take the perfume with me through security. My luggage was full. I was like, let me give it to my dad as a gift. It was like almost half full, more than half full. Blue bottle, like with a silver top. I don't remember the brand. Walking through the corridor, I go into my parents' bedroom, and I found my dad, big man, crying on the bed, like sitting down, not believing that his eldest son is going. And it was a very emotional moment. Like I was like, why am I doing this to my parents? Like even now that I think of it,
of course,
I get very emotional. I was like, why am I doing this to my parents? Why am I leaving? Like what do I have to prove? But it was a done deal. Like if I didn't do it now, I would probably never do it. And I was like, at the time, it wasn't like today, WhatsApp, Facebook and all that. Messenger existed, but you needed to dial up your internet after 6 o'clock.
Yes, after 6.
And I don't know, like then it just became, all of a sudden when we arrived at the airport, all the people I had done the training with were there. The parents were, like crying and all that. It was typical Malta.
Yes, obviously.
All the whole cousins and uncles and aunties come to wish you off. And this is 15 years ago. And then all of a sudden, like we left and we arrived and we're looking for a place to stay. Like I spent a whole month waiting for the work permit to arrive, and I didn't have an income. I just left with 600 euros in my bank account, which is nothing.
But in London.
In London. I was working in a pub, like to support myself. And I remember, I think the biggest shock for me was, I remember once I missed the last train at like 11 at night or something. And I had to, go home somehow. And I got a quote for a taxi. They were like all £80. And bear in mind, we're talking 15 years ago.
Yeah.
So £80 today is also like £80, like about 100 euros at the time. Even today, I'd say €100 taxi. I'd be like...
And back then there was no Uber or anything?
Exactly, but back then it was even worse.
No.
And I remember, I was like, okay, so buses go on all night in London. So I checked with a map how I have to do it, and I'm like, okay. And I remember getting the first bus. I stepped, okay, so I have to get, like, for example, number 77. I go on number 77, and like 5-6 stops on, I realized I got it from the wrong side of the road. So I was going in the opposite direction when I needed to go. I was like, this is like already midnight. And then I got off, crossed the road, looked for the bus stop. Okay, 77, let's wait here. It took another 20 minutes to arrive. I got on, and then it was like a whole hour until I got to Trafalgar Square, which is halfway to where I need to go. And I remember it was like 1:30 in the morning. I'm in the middle of Trafalgar Square, cold, busy, like you wouldn't expect. For Malta at the time wasn't as busy as it is today.
Yeah.
Where at 2 in the morning, you'd see cars all around.
Oof.
And it was like full-on traffic jam in Trafalgar Square at 2 a.m. I'm cold. I can't find a taxi to save my life. I didn't know where I needed to go to get the connecting bus to where I needed to go. And I remember just looking up at the sky. I'm like, I'm from this little, small, warm island, right?
Yeah.
Anytime I make a call, my dad will come pick me up from either end of the island if I had to, if I needed. Like it could be 3-4 in the morning. If in case of emergency, I could call my dad, my uncle, my mom, someone.
Yeah.
And I'd be in Chirkewa, they would live in Birzabuja, and it still wouldn't be an issue to come pick me up. But I was like, don't know where to go. And then finally I found out where the Tedan, and it took me forever. But that was like a big moment for me. It was like, I realized what a huge obstacle I had overcome. Purely because at the time, again, no Google Maps, no...
You had to use...
Navigate, just a map.
Yeah.
And I was like, if I can overcome this, which up until a day ago seemed bigger than me, but now I can go anytime. Like if anytime,
you can do it again now.
Can do it again. Then anything like that, I could learn how to sort of overcome. And I remember like a few weeks later, my flatmate Alvin showed me The Secret, the movie.
Okay.
You ever watched it? The Secret is
not
originally a book. It's about the secret, like the law of attraction and blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
So this was my first ever exposure to any sort of self-development.
Right.
I had no idea what self-development was. And I watched this documentary type movie, Bob Proctor, Esther Hicks, like insane the amount of people that were talking on it. And one of the speakers mentioned something like there was an artist and he was like drawing all these girls looking away from him. And funnily enough, his romantic love life was bad. And she thought, why don't you draw like what you want? And I was like, seriously, like, what am I watching, you know? Like, what am I watching? But I am a believer. As a person, I'm a believer. Like, until proven otherwise, I want
You
to
believe?
believe
Okay.
in
You're not a cynic like me then.
No.
I mean,
I don't know if you're a cynic.
I'm very
not
much a cynic, yes.
By time I've become a bit, you know, what happens by growing up. But I remember drawing myself. I can't draw to save my life. But I drew a man, which in my head is a representation of me, singing on a stage in front of the most random number. I wrote 22,000 people. I don't know why it was 22, not 20 or 24. It was 22,000 people. To fast forward a bit, 4 years later, when I won Eurovision and I represented Malta and Azerbaijan, the Crystal Hall, basically the concert hall in Azerbaijan, where I went to Eurovision, there were 22,000 people.
So you manifested it.
So, and it was the only time at the time that there were so many people at Eurovision, because usually the number is between 13 and 16,000 people.
Really?
Because they would be smaller.
Because the stadium was...
This was built specifically for Eurovision.
That's cool.
And there were 22,000 people.
We're talking about manifesting, or whatever you want to call it, right? So projecting what you want to achieve in life and then doing it. If you believe it enough, it can happen. And this guy was on a podcast very recently, and he talked about the power of manifestation and how strong it actually is, that we don't even know how strong it is, and how our brains can even change the way we feel and heal certain illnesses. Where this guy, he said, I'm a scientist, I refuse to believe this, but the data is proving me wrong, because it is correct, it's happening.
Okay, wow.
And he's had people stand up from wheelchairs and degenerative diseases and stuff like that, within obviously straight away. This is not like the power of healing type of thing, but he started doing seminars based on a specific process to follow to get your brain to believe what you want to believe. And then the output of that is that people actually start healing themselves, mental and physical illnesses as well. And this guy has been completely put aback in terms of how,
as you're talking to me right now, I'm getting this hot, I don't know how to explain it,
flash.
Not hot flash. Wrong gender. No, but I mean, I'm getting excited to talk about a lot of these things because,
and I'm like you, because you started talking about the topic, and I'm learning to get better at it since I've started this podcast, which is to just not, oh my god, I know this topic, let's talk about it. But it's interesting that you mentioned that. Obviously, you painting yourself, and this artist painting women away.
Drew with a pencil, something that represented me in my head, because if you see this, I look nothing like this.
Traced. But no, but I mean, it's even starting this podcast, for example, if I go through quickly my experience, I did not have any experience in doing this. Luckily, I found a business partner who has some experience in doing some of this work in terms of the back end of it. But the front, I'm just literally mimicking what I watch and what I see at this point.
Yes.
But I put myself, I'm constantly visioning myself of sitting down and just having this really relaxed conversation with my guest, and I'm really enjoying doing it so far. So hopefully, and I don't even care about how many views it gets or whatever, I'm just enjoying the process of speaking to really interesting people such as yourself, learning their journey, learning kind of what I can do better in mine. And it's just manifesting itself because I believe it's something that I enjoy doing. So very interesting you mentioned that, because I am, as much as I am a cynic, I am a believer of this.
Yes.
You can call it a vision board, because that's also something that you do, right?
You can call it whatever you like, but the truth is that there are so many ways to explain how the law of attraction works. And even if we did 3-4 hours talking about it, it's still something that someone who just got introduced to it now will not understand straight away, because it is a journey of discovery. First you have to be ready to open your mind and accept something that you've never known before. Mm-hmm. If you want different results, you can't keep on doing the same thing that you've been doing all your life. You need to be ready to challenge things, and I think one of my fortes has always been that I am ready to learn, to listen, to challenge myself, to be challenged as a person, to accept criticism, ideally constructive, but even when someone says something in order to destroy, as destructive, there is still some
silver lining.
There's still some elements that if they hit you hard enough, then potentially there is some element of truth in what this person would be saying somehow.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I believe that as well. As much, sometimes some people say stuff just out of anger or something like that, and you'll be like, oh, that doesn't feel great.
Yeah.
But then be like, so why doesn't it? So I ask myself, so why doesn't it feel great?
Yes, exactly.
Like, it obviously hurt me because there's something that's real in it, and the truth
There's something
hurts.
that resonates.
Yes, I agree. And it's funny that you mentioned trying new things, because I'm like that as well. Like, I always love to get obsessed with new stuff and learn, this is the next thing.
Right.
Me doing this is
Yes.
my
For
next
sure.
step, right?
For sure.
But do you feel like when can you tell that it's ready? It's now time to move on to something else?
I love dogs.
Mm.
How is that relevant to that question? I'm coming to it.
You're a good storyteller. Anyone ever tell you that? Don't look at
Part
the
of
camera.
being a songwriter. So dogs do what feels right. And most animals. And us as human beings, albeit being a higher form of intelligence, we have put aside what feels right and follow a lot only logic. But as humans, we are emotional beings. So, yes, men tend to be more logic than women. Another argument which we should not open it's a Pandora's box.
Yeah, absolutely.
But in a nutshell, the whatever. Let's cut this part out.
That's okay.
We are more emotional. So the moment we become too logical, we start treating people as numbers. We start treating, like setbacks in life. We start looking who to blame rather than take it as an opportunity to see how this situation is serving me in this journey called life. I lost my trail of thought.
It happens a lot. It happens to me as well. So we're talking about dogs. So why
yes.
when do you realize that you are
when it's time to
ready
move on
to something else?
Right. Okay, good.
Listen, it happens to me so far every podcast. So it's gonna happen to me at some point.
Okay.
It happens. It's normal.
Okay, so dogs.
Back to dogs.
So animals in general, they do what feels right.
Mm.
Because our as beings, our gut is a sort of connected to some sort of, I don't know what it's connected to.
It's directly connected to the brain. It is the organ with the most nerve endings.
Yeah, good. I learned something new today. And by giving a bit of time to think and to challenge and to take yourself out of your body and have a conversation with yourself, is this thing serving for me to become? Is this serving towards my goals? What do I want in the next 5 years? The thing that I'm doing now, is it serving that? Yes or no? Simple as. If I had a restaurant, I didn't have a restaurant. I was a partner in a restaurant, a very small partner. They got us in because of my experience in catering, and because at the time I was already a bit popular, so with music and whatever, and they gave us a partnership in return for our work. And I'm giving a lot of details here, but it's fine.
No, but that's all.
Through this journey, in the first, there was a lot of enthusiasm. There was a lot of love and passion for what we're doing. We're getting a lot of people. COVID hit, and obviously a lot of challenges came with COVID in general, with us being a new restaurant during COVID. with all the enthusiasm that we had.
Shit, so so the restaurant opened just before COVID, is
The restaurant was planned to open. We had done all the agreements before COVID began, like literally a few weeks.
Shit.
And then as soon as we were like, okay, let's start moving forward, we had put on a date and blah, blah, blah. Then COVID began. And we're already like committed and knee deep into it.
Yeah, you have to.
You know? And I remember like they then the government let the restaurants open, so we went in all out to start preparing, and we created a lot of enthusiasm about this restaurant, and we were always fully booked for like weeks in advance. It was a very exciting time. But then at some point, we were looking at things differently. Like I'm saying, challenges during COVID brought out a lot of sides of us human beings that we were not aware that existed. Like the restaurant was not making a profit, and the enthusiasm was, chipped because everyone was looking how to. Everyone has their expenses, everyone has their home loan, their blah blah blah. So we needed an income somehow. So we left that restaurant, and all of a sudden it started to lose its quality. And then I remember at some point I had made an examination with myself. I was like, is this restaurant, as much hard work as I've put into it, as we've all put into it, all partners and all the people who've worked there, chefs, waiters, singers, like all the guests that we had, it was hard to let go of it because, it was, in my mind, I thought I would be able to make it a franchise and all that. But at some point I thought to myself, is this really what I want to be doing? Like, do I really want to be disinvolved in a restaurant when I have a career in music that,
it's doing all right?
Is doing all right? I mean, and as hard as it was, I had to say goodbye. Because I thought to myself, I'm 32, I'm not in my 20s anymore, but I'm also not older. And then a career in music, there is a time frame where it's like, listen, I'm either going to make the most of it now, or I'm going to be too old. And when I say old, I'm already in my mid-30s, and I don't want to be singing 4 nights a week.
Of course.
At night when I could be at home with my family, watching a movie, or I don't know, like resting so that I can wake up early the next day and go do a workout and make the most of the day.
How much do you value family time?
Family has been the biggest blessing in my life since I was a kid. My parents, my brothers, my uncles, my aunties, my cousins, my grandparents, people who are not essentially blood related but feel like family. They for me, that was, when I look back on my life, that is the biggest thing that I think my parents could have given me, like so many good relationships with lots of people.
It's overlooked by many, because I'm also very grateful of the opportunities my parents gave me, and the memories they created for me. And it's like I'm glad you're grateful for it as well, because it's overlooked by a lot of people that get that blessing.
Because we're becoming a logical society rather than allowing our emotions. It's good to find a balance between the two, don't get me wrong.
And I think when you're going through it as a kid as well, and as a young teenager or as an older teenager, you don't really value it as much as you value it now when you're in your 30s and you understand how cruel and isolating the world can be.
Yes.
And,
and how the world is not ready to give you a second chance.
No.
And the world is not ready to lift you up when you are in a bad place. Yes, we post all these self-empowerment and like if you ever need a friend, and there are a lot of genuine people who are ready to help you. But at the same time, if you do not like make the first step like life, the way it has become expensive, fast-paced, a lot of pressure to keep up with the Joneses. You know what I mean? It takes a lot of self-effort and a lot of determination to be in a bad place and somehow steer your life back on track.
I agree. I think there's definitely a lot of lessons to take from how we used to live before and how we live now.
Yes.
And the comparison of it.
Yes.
And sometimes I ask the question as well, like, is it worth it? Is it worth, like, literally not going home before 9 o'clock at night because you're working on multiple projects and all that? And sometimes the answer is no. Sometimes I'm like, fuck it, I'm just going to finish work and go home, you know? But you're right. And then being in dark places, which we all get at some point as well, it's not always easy to pull yourself out. I had a previous guest on here that said that if somebody put you in a dark place, and most of the time it's because of somebody or a scenario or an experience, somebody has to get you out of it. And we talked about I don't know what it was called.
Codependency.
Not codependency. You just have to have somebody. What? Co-regulation.
Okay.
So having someone to help you regulate that emotion and take you out of it, right?
Yes.
And how important that is. And it's true. It is true that you have somebody. You usually tend to try and find somebody to talk to, or to get you to talk you out of something,
yes.
or talk you into something.
Okay. I get that completely. However, it still starts off with you making the decision that you want to do it. You know, like, yes. I mean, the expression is you can take the horse to the water, but you can't make it drink, you know, like I am the perfect example of this, because I've had people in my toughest times who tried to help me and gave me good opportunities and gave me solutions, but I just didn't want to listen at certain times in my life. There were many moments where I was like, no, and I was wrong. And it's okay, because like somehow, somewhere along the line, I learned my lesson and I didn't repeat my mistakes.
But that's life, eh?
Yes, but I see so many people who are in their mid-40s and 50s, and they're still complaining about the same things that they've complained about 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. I mean, at some point, you just have to let go and move on.
That lack of self-awareness frustrates me in people sometimes. Like, you're the same person you were 10 years ago. Like, how is that possible?
Yeah.
Like, what did you have to go through in your life to be so stubborn?
I understand what you're saying, and not to belittle your thoughts, but to challenge your thought. People are on a different journey. People are on a different journey. So, yes, some people, they stick to something for 20 years, they hold on to it so tight, but that gives them some sort of purpose somehow, right? It gives them a purpose. You might not agree with it, but you need to understand why it frustrates you.
It frustrates me because I always try and so for example, personally, like we talked about it, even you, I try and improve myself all the time. Yes. Which puts me in very vulnerable positions sometimes, because I tend to not, like, if you come and tell me, Dan, like, stop doing this, if we work together, I'm like, listen, stop saying this because it's just stupid, or it doesn't give this is not how you should do this. It's not how you should write this document. It's not how you should have these types of conversations. I would be like, you know what, you're right. But then I come to you and I try and tell you something and you're like, no, that's not how it works, And I'm like, man, like, just try and get better. Like, why aren't you,
It's I agree with
you.
You
kind of broke that emotional deal.
You are preaching to the converted.
Yes.
Because I am a person who I welcome criticism because I want to learn, I want to grow. I know that where I am now, there's still so much more that I feel that I can achieve in my life, and I feel that I've barely gotten started. I've barely tipped.
That's it, right? So that's why it frustrates me, basically. It's because I want to take criticism, but then when I try and I don't really criticize, I try not to criticize, because, as you said, everyone's on their own journey. Obviously, the older I get, the less
bothered.
I don't care. Like, if you do you, man. Yeah, unless you're annoying, unless you're impacting me, you do you. You live your life. But it's still I can feel that little anger and rage generating.
It could be a number of things, the reason why it frustrates you.
Yeah.
I guess from my end, it would frustrate me because I know how I've benefited in my life
Yes.
when I took on criticism with an open mind. But also it might frustrate me because maybe I didn't phrase my criticism in a way
Yes.
that resonates with the person who I want to, get to.
Yes.
Like, people speak in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Luckily, a few years ago, I am a qualified neuro-linguistic programmer, it's called. NLP.
Yes.
I did the practitioner about 10 years ago. And last October, I got my master. I'm a master practitioner.
Yeah, let's go.
And when I did my master practitioner, actually, I realized, I'll explain in a nutshell what NLP is. But I realized also I lost my trail of thought again.
What NLP is?
Yes, but before, why did I mention NLP in the first place?
I think we were talking about criticism and growing and, why people frustrate me. And you.
I lost my trail of thought.
That's number 2. Can we do a trail of thought counters?
That would be funny.
Because that is
That
going
would
to
be
be
really
awesome.
funny. In NLP, one of the things that I learned, one of many things that I learned, is how fascinating the human brain is. And how us human beings are our worst enemy and our best friend. Because we convince ourselves and we convince others to do the most stupid things and to make the best decisions. There are people who are visual people. There are people who are auditory people. There are people who are kinesthetic, so either taste or how they feel and all that. Being a person who wears glasses, and I'm a person who wears glasses and you wear glasses, we tend to be more auditory.
Correct.
Right? I learn better when I listen than when I read. So when someone speaks to me and says, because, example, the room was very dark or it was very bright or there were, I don't know, like a lot of chairs, and I can imagine it, but it is very foggy in my head.
Mm-hmm.
But when someone says the room, I don't know, was very quiet, even in a noisy place, I can imagine a quiet sound. I can imagine an echoey. So as a person, when people speak to me in sounds, in explaining sounds and feelings, because I am a mixture of auditory and kinesthetic, then they will get to me more than by explaining what it looks like.
It's about framing it in the right context for the person. Yeah, absolutely.
And in NLP, I learned that people show you their preferences because it's how they talk. People, the choice of words, the tempo, if they speak slow, if they speak fast. Imagine someone who is a very nervous person speaks very fast and blah, 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 and always swearing. And then he's like...
Why did you just describe me in a sentence there?
I wasn't doing it intentionally. Maybe I'm spending so much time with you now.
Who the fuck you think you talk to, man?
And then someone comes and is like, hey, are you interested in buying...
I get a panic attack.
I can tell. Like, you didn't even let me finish. Because and you're turning red, and like I can see all these things because I study the subject. But why did I study the subject? Because I want to learn to communicate better. Songwriting is all about communicating. It's all about getting a feeling, an emotion that a person would have gone through, and expressing that through an art form, which is auditory. So it's the choice of instruments, the words, the placement of the words, the intonation, the pace, everything. I mean, it doesn't make sense. I love you with all my heart.
Yeah.
Doesn't make sense. But it's like, like soft, I love you. It's like, it's a softer emotion. So these are the things that make a difference that is why I challenge myself.
I like the connection you made to music with it, which is very interesting actually, because it's true. It's just coming from someone who I mean, I'm not anywhere close to your level, but I have been dabbling into music for a long time in my life. And I played guitar and I played some gigs and stuff, but it is true. Like even how you feel on the day of the gig, really, especially as a guitar player, like it really you can tell the difference in the way the music sounds.
Yes.
Because the chords are harder if you're really passionate, or you know.
Yes.
So absolutely.
And if I can connect logic and emotion, you can get now with AI. It's different. We're moving into a new era.
Yes.
But you can. There are programs that exist where a maestro would write the notes, and the application would play it. But you wouldn't get any feel because it's robotic. Whereas a human being with the imperfections, but feeling the guitarist, because you mentioned the guitarist, close his eyes and the way he would strum that chord is a form of energy. It's a transmitter and it's an exchange of energy.
I was just having this conversation with someone else. This is why I've been playing guitar for 16 years now. I've always went back to blues as my favorite music to listen to. Zeppelin is one of my favorite bands. Zeppelin is a blues band. I will fight you if you argue against it.
Not arguing.
And you know, listening to Howling Wolf and you know, the Hendrix, the Muddy Waters, you know, all the Delta Plane blues guys. Robert Johnson, that's the guy I was thinking about. But I've always gone back to blues. And why am I saying this? It's because blues is not a complex form of music. It's technical, yes. There's absolutely technical elements. If you listen to Buddy Guy or B.B. King, you will get into that level of detail and technicalities. But it's also very much a feel-based 100%. Music, very soulful, right?
100%.
And it is the ultimate emotional type of music, in my opinion. So I've always went back to it. I used to play flamenco, went back to blues. I got into metal, back to blues, you know, got into rock and roll, back to blues, because it's jazz, gypsy jazz.
It resonates with you the most.
Because it is based on feeling, and I am not a technical guitarist, I was self-taught. But you can self-teach yourself blues, because all you need to learn is just the pentatonic scale and blues scale. There are a few other scales you can mix in.
Yes.
But once you have the first few scales, you can play most of the blues world. Anyway, talked a bit too much about blues there from my end, but this is why I like that type of music, which is very emotion based, and which is why I like musicals, for example.
Yes.
Because it's usually based on emotion, trying to convey the feel of that.
100%.
You know, what's your favorite musical? Let's go.
Musical?
Yes. Or are you not a musical guy?
I am a musical guy.
No, I thought you would be.
It's hard to say because I'm such a moody person. Like if you told me what your favorite dish is, I can't tell you.
It's based on
song,
feel.
It's a mood I'd be in. Like recently, I watched Phantom of the Opera again after many years, and it resonated with me in a very different way than it did in my teens. Les Miserables.
Les Mis, that's my partner's favorite one.
Yes?
Yeah.
I mean, for me, at this point in my life, I would say The Greatest Showman, even though it's not a staged musical.
It's good, though.
It is phenomenal. It is what I aspire. I want to write a musical.
Oh, really?
It's one of my goals. I've been wanting to write a musical for a long time.
Takes a long time, though, because you need to do the scores, huh?
It's not just about that. I want to write a musical that shares my life experiences, but not it being based. It's not the story of Kurt Calleja. It's like has nothing to do. But there will be lessons that I would have picked up in my life that I would like to put them in.
Would you write the musical in Maltese or
English?
English. That's cool.
I have a story already. I have the characters. I've done the research. Their names represent their characters. So there's a lot of research that was already done.
What makes a good musical in your opinion?
So in my day-to-day life, I don't break out into song when I'm
Shit, you don't, man. I thought you did.
but when I am happy in a good place, I do sing for no reason. And how wonderful would it be if, like, you could, at the spur of a moment, just because you're feeling good, come up with a really good hit.
And you hear that crescendo coming from...
And people who are at, I don't know, at the swings with their kids all of a sudden are like dancing.
Like a flash crowd.
It's all synchronized, like how wonderful that
like a flash mob.
It's an imaginary world where like there's more cooperation than there is in the real world, I would say.
It's such a good way of putting it, and it's interesting because it's really good. Like, for example, for me, something that really draws me to a musical like Hamilton was one of my favorites, probably my favorite. It's good. It's just, for me, it's excruciatingly long. It is, because in fact, to be honest, like, my favorite part of Hamilton is Act 1, because Act 2, I'm like, well, there is really good songs in Act 2 that I love, like when Jefferson comes and stuff like that. But listen, it gets. I mean, the phrasing of the songs. But the cast is like they're like gods. So when they were like, obviously when we were underwriting it, but then you've got David Diggs, who's incredible. I forgot the name of the guy who played Washington. He's the voice of Moana's father in Moana as well. So he's a great singer. They were all a group together. Yes. But I think for me, like it's the underlying melody that remains the same throughout all of the songs. Yes. And I've always been in awe of how, like, even Disney, right? Like the guy Alan Merkel, is it? No. The guy who wrote most of the Disney scores, like, Little Mermaid. He wrote some of The Lion King, Aladdin, and all that. So this guy wrote literally much all of our childhoods. Right. And you can tell he's always got this constant melody that he keeps throughout the whole film. Yes. And obviously throughout the whole music. It's a mood, a melody. Exactly. Yeah. So even then, when the song slows down, you're still looking at the. So for me, like, it's something, I forgot it. Yeah. Like it's. That always takes me like to a part of like, but yes. No, but it's I exactly. know what you're saying. There was another one I was gonna say and I forgot about it. Shit, I lost it. Counter. Thank you. 2-1. I'm winning. Wait, who loses the most? The one who has the least wins. The lead, yes. I'm still ahead. I'm still ahead. But no, like it's interesting, and I've always saw it. Yes, I remember in Star Wars. You'll notice that if you'll notice in the old Star Wars as well, like when the tone changes. And you'll go into, but first there'll be like, and then he'll go into this little, but then as soon as the face of the actor changes or something happens, so and it keeps going, right? And it keeps happening in the more modern movies. Yes. And the noughties one that came out, Phantom Menace and all that. I'm a big Star Wars fan, so I'm not gonna get into it. Yes, you lost me at Star Wars. I know. I just the music. But the score of the film is such a iconic. It's insane. It's the same with Lord of the Rings. Where are we getting at? Why are we talking about this? It is insanely hard, I think, to do that as a musician, as a composer rather, which is if you manage to do that in your musical, that's your challenge. Yeah, I mean, yes, there are many ways of writing a musical, because there are songs which are happy songs but have a sad style of music. It is a way of interpreting. There are sad songs that have a very up-tempo melody and music. I mean, there's not, but a musical, yes, I think the music should represent the feeling. And we haven't started on the songwriting yet. It's something that requires a lot of dedication, and life tends to get in the way. I'm not saying it as an excuse. The truth is, I just haven't given it enough time and importance yet. Yes, you have to obsess about it as well. Yes. Because then you forget what you wrote about if you're not doing it. And you know what happened to me recently? I watched a movie about the guy who wrote Rent. Tick, Tick, Boom. Tick, Tick, Boom. That's a good film. And I remember in this movie, and I wanted to watch it because
obviously I want to write a musical, so I wanted to. And I remember two main points in this movie. One of them was when he spent, I don't know how many years, working on his first musical. I don't remember.
I don't remember what.
But he spent years working on this musical and getting the right cast and done and a lot of challenges and I don't know, like difficult times and then he finally, after many years, got the cast together and he got a few investors and people who directors and all that, and he presented this show, his life's work, in one show. And the feedback was no, like they were like, Bech.
Yeah.
They were like, you know, you're onto something, but this is not this. And he was destroyed after that. And it took him a long time. You know, he started working in marketing. You know, and he was good at it because he was a really good songwriter, but it wasn't his passion. You know. And then, after so many years, he started working on another musical, and he didn't live to see the musical debut. And that scared me a lot. That really, I remember watching it, I got like a cold sweat, a shiver, and I was very emotional watching this musical because this movie, because I was like, I don't want to be that person who. It's not nice. It's not a nice thing to admit it, but the truth is, I don't want to be one of these people who doesn't live to see his work become a reality. You know, like.
Do you fear death then? Do you fear death?
I do fear death. Yes, I do fear death, especially before having lived. You know, before having done all the things that I would like to achieve in this life. Yes, I do fear that. I fear death for that reason, and I fear being forgotten.
I was gonna ask. That was. I think that's the only thing. That's the one thing I fear. Like, I'm not scared. Like I went through this when I had my daughter. I was like, I was so scared to like get hurt or something like that because I wanted. But I had to get over that thought because it was crippling me.
Yes,
like it was sending me insane.
Okay.
So I was like, I can't be afraid to die. But being forgotten is probably a big. It's a very big fear of mine as well. I don't know why. It must be an ego thing. Like, it has to be an ego.
For sure,
thing.
It
has to be.
Because really and truly, I mean, I've so far I haven't died yet, so I would.
No, yeah.
But I mean, if whatever you believe in happens after this life, you won't be attached to the feelings of this world, you know. So, technically speaking, I think something that gave me a lot of peace about this subject. I hope we're not going into this subject because of death, because I do get a bit uneasy around this subject. But
I've experienced so many deaths this year that I've gotten really numb to it. I am very much like you. I don't. It's not a nice thing to think about, especially in our 30s.
Exactly, because
you know, no,
yes.
It's not.
Trail of thought 301 here.
Yes. Let's go. We're talking about that.
Yes, I know, but I was going to make a point.
It's okay.
Yes, so something that gave me peace was that we have no guarantees of anything other than now. So now is the time that you enjoy the food that you want to enjoy. Now is the time that you do the exercise that will help you be strong, live a healthy life. Now is the time to say I love you. Now is the time to share what you have, what you've been given, what you've been lucky enough to achieve in your life with others. It's pointless enjoying it on your own.
Absolutely. I think,
you know,
we always talk about here on the podcast, we always talk about the importance of finding your people and community and having that support circle and all that, because why the hell are you living life otherwise, right?
It doesn't make sense. And to be fair, I noticed like last year, 2022, was a year of achievements for me. It was one of those years where after 2 years of COVID, the restaurant didn't do as well as I hoped for. Certain plans I had in 2020, contracts that were signed, never materialized because of COVID. Not being able to pay my home loan, not being able to buy groceries for 2 whole years was a struggle. But last year, 2022, was a year of achievements in terms of career and I would say financial.
Good for you. I'm glad, mate.
Thank you.
It's good. It's actually, like, I can only imagine how much it sucks having your passion and also form of income taken away because of COVID.
Yes,
It must have been crushing. Right?
Yes, and but I learned how to be humble. I learned how to appreciate. It was the first time in my life during COVID that I had a circle of friends. I always knew a lot of people. I've known a lot of people. I've had many friends come in and out of my life. But it was the first time that I built relationships during COVID, that I actually, aside from my family, that I built bonds with people. I sat down and I had the time and I enjoyed listening to a person talk without having to take anything out of it, you know?
I feel like COVID almost, because even for me, I think I'm reflecting on what you're saying, and I can definitely relate. COVID is like it stopped the hamster wheel for a bit.
Yes.
And you can walk out and smell the flowers for a while.
Yes. So much so. So I talk about COVID sometimes with a very negative, because yes, it affected my mental well-being. It affected my, to be able to hug people that I love. It affected my income. So I couldn't perform. But at the same time, a big tipping point in my life happened during COVID. I could, like you said, go out and do a 3-hour walk. I had nowhere to go. I had nowhere to be. My parents live in Aura and I live in Rabat. Usually to go visit my parents, I get the car. I used to walk it from Rabat to Aura. Took me 2.5 hours to walk it. But so what? There was no one in the street. I remember in Burmarat, the road of Burmarat. At the time they hadn't done the barriers yet. I remember I sat in the middle of the road at noon. At noon. I sat in the middle of the road and I took a selfie. In the middle of... I would never be able to take this photo again.
It's awesome.
Yeah. I remember it was the first time walking through that road and I noticed that artichokes grow in one of the fields there. It's like these little... I've passed through this road all my life because my grandma used to be in Bujibba in summer. We lived in Hamroon. That was one of the roads. Coast Road was like a scary when we were kids.
Yeah.
So I used to pass through Burmarat. And I never noticed that artichokes grow there. Never.
Notice your artichokes, guys. But it's interesting. No, it's interesting. Jokes aside, like that, because we're experiencing life at such a pace, and then when you slow down, you experience it.
Now it's faster than before.
Oh yeah. Now it's like
crazy.
600-700 miles an hour. But I get that when we visit in the UK a lot. When we visit in the UK, since we go quite a bit, once or twice a year. In the UK, where we go and visit, it's in the south of the UK. It's in the I wouldn't say in the countryside, but it's suburban, and life very much slows down.
Yes.
And even the way of life is very much slow.
Yes.
Like in the UK, it's much slower than what we're here, because let's go shopping, or let's go and do this experience. Okay, what time we're going? I'll be like, one-ish. One-ish. And for me, somebody that I like to be on the dot, like exactly what time I need to go, it kills me on the inside. In fact, they make fun of me when I visit there because I'm just there literally jumping on, are we going or no? Because if we're not going now, I want to do something else. I don't want to just sit here and wait.
Yes.
Whereas it's, everyone's very relaxed.
Completely. I think something that, from what you're saying, also people at different stages of their lives. I remember being 20 or 21. I just got back from living in London. There was a recession, and I was doing like 3 jobs to be able to make one decent income at the time.
Yeah.
And I remember working as a night receptionist. And you've got all night to do a bit of paperwork as a handover for the next receptionist. So this guy who was teaching me, showing me on my first day of work as a night receptionist, was showing me the things to do. I'm like all this energy and like, yeah, let's finish it. And he's writing down like a few words, and he's like looking at it. It's like thinking and taking his time. He has all night.
Of course. What else are you gonna do?
And I'm like, I remember I felt like I wanted to grab him, throw him over the reception desk, and like, I just write them and like, let's put on a movie or something, you know?
But I think that's what I would do.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And but like now, also at the same time, I'm thinking to myself, now that I'm older, last Saturday, for example, I had a lot to do, a lot of things on my to-do list. But I also needed to sit down and relax a bit, because when I go into overdrive, I know like the Christmas period is coming around. We're going to be busy with events. And November is a quiet month. It's like, Kurt, remember during COVID? Like, I have these conversations with myself with Handy. And it's like, remember during COVID how many things you managed to recreate and how you steered your life around because you took some time to relax, to slow down time. I just went to the beach in November. There were still the deck chairs. The weather was beautiful. I just sat down for about 40 minutes just staring at the sea.
It's good.
It's like my brain, I felt like I remembered how to breathe again. I remember just enjoying listening to children laughing and I don't
taking it in,
you know, like the air was so, you know, like looking at the sea. There's no boats because it's like not boat season anymore.
No, man, they take them up. Otherwise, they can risk getting destroyed.
You know, so and then what happened automatically, because I gave myself that time for a break. Then in an hour I did 3 hours worth of work. You know,
it's surprising when you relax. Like I remember, I had this job and we were going through a very quiet. We had just finished setting up this massive organization structure, and I think we had a couple of weeks where there was nothing in the pipeline because we were waiting for these structures to start operating. I remember going to my boss and I was like, I have nothing to do right now. And he was like, just enjoy it, Dan. I was like, just when it gets periods, he said, this is a very small window where you won't have a lot to do.
Yeah.
He was like, when it happens,
it will happen.
Welcome it, enjoy it, just enjoy the quietness because, you know, and it's true. And I learned that, like, not that now at work I get quiet points because I don't think I've had a quiet points in the last 4 months. But like sometimes when I have like an hour where I don't really have anything penned in.
Yes.
I tend to take that time to take it in. But I take it in during work, right? So going a bit back into like work mode or whatever. I like understand like how are my team doing, right? What are our clients saying? What are the big ticket items? Like what's potentially gonna be on fire that we need to preemptively approach, right? And you start thinking about that. So rather than figuring out what I'm gonna do next, what's happening now, and I think that's important.
Yeah.
So no, that's a good point.
I mean, when I look back again, we're referring to COVID times because we just got onto it, but you can learn from anything. I remember when there was a time in COVID I thought it would be it's like a 2-week thing. And then it would be over, like everything.
What was it called? Flatten the curve?
Yes. Oh my God, don't get me. And then like 2 months in, people are like, this will all be over in a month. And then like 6 months in, there's like the vaccine will be ready in 6 months' time. So it's like, oh my God, like that's going to be a whole year. And I remember saying to myself, there was a time, and I really needed it and it was good, but I just spent 2 whole weeks in bed doing nothing but watching TikToks.
Dude, don't mention that. I burned my old phone before this one. I watched so much TikTok that I had the TikTok, like button, and like the follow, and thing burnt into the screen. That's why I threw the phone away.
Oh, you joking? You're serious?
No. I am shooting. I still have this phone. I gave it to my brother actually. And I switched it on after like a year because he needed the phone because he broke it and he needed an interim
And it's still
phone.
there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It was still
Oh my
burnt in.
God.
It was literally burnt in the screen. I think I probably fell asleep with it running as well, to be fair.
Probably.
But it was still,
Hilarious.
a good 15 hours of TikTok running. Probably the same TikTok just going on.
But why am I mentioning this? Because then I remember at some point, then went on to the trends of like doing banana bread and cooking and sharing every single thing that I would have done all day. And then there was the whole Zoom calls with friends and hours of just staring at each other. The alcohol that I consumed on my own at home, insane. It was just insane. And then I remember just saying to myself, listen, let's say this chapter takes 5 years. Let's exaggerate. What if COVID takes 5 years to be a thing of the past? Am I going to waste 5 years of my life? I'm still going to be 36 after 5 years. Whether or not COVID is around, it's not like time stops for 5 years and then life gets to be the same. So I'm not going to waste 5 years of my life. If I am lucky to live for so many years, those 5 would still be deducted either or. So I wanted to take the opportunity that I didn't have for a long time to learn as much as I could. I read a lot of books. I signed up to online courses. I actually did the last course that Bob Proctor did before he passed away. I was following live, doing the work. I did online songwriting courses. I learned how to change sockets.
I learned how to do that as well during COVID. Yeah.
I don't know, like,
funny you mention that because that's like a random thing I learned as well. It's weird.
I did so much DIY in my house, and I am not a DIY person. By the way, I'm not a DIY person. But I was like, this is the only opportunity I have. I get to explore Rabat in a way that I've never. Because I'm from Hamrun, so I wasn't up in Rabat.
Rabat's lovely, yeah.
It is.
Rabat's awesome.
I mean, the walks I went on in Rabat on my own, or sometimes with 1 or 2 friends because of the bubble.
You remember the bubble? Oh shit, man! I could bring in so much stuff that for me it feels like
a lifetime ago.
It doesn't even feel real anymore.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like it's just weird. Like do you remember? But how much of these things became common household phrases?
Like the new norm.
Yeah.
The new norm.
Challenging times. I know we're going through some challenging times. The daily COVID count.
The daily COVID count.
What's her name?
Charmaine.
Charmaine.
And like today they found 16. How much? And 16 was nothing in comparison then to a year later when we were finding 500 a day.
I question about DIY because I'm also not a big DIY. But was your dad a big DIY guy?
My dad is not a DIY guy. Out of habit. He does the DIY necessary after he gets a lot of memos
reminders, yes
from mommy. Like, mom is the DIY in the household.
Because my dad is a big DIY guy, and that's why I was always very like, he's gonna do it, so why should I even learn that skill?
My mom in our house, in our home in Hamrun, she painted walls. She upholstered sofas. She, brushed wood and repainted it. She, I don't know, laid tiles.
Yeah.
Like my mom is the only thing she would never go play with is electricity and plumbing.
Okay. So it's this dynamic I have in our house as well, because Zoe does, like, if it comes to painting furniture and stuff like that,
Yeah.
she'll get involved. Plumbing and electricity, I will dabble a bit, but I would much rather call a plumber because I'm.
We're at that. We're at that time. We're in the world where yes, get a professional, because you lose so much time trying to learn something and buy the wrong things.
Although it's interesting, so.
But at the same time, now at the point in my life where I am, I find that it is important to learn how to do these things.
Absolutely. When we bought our new house, I started learning, and it is a cost cut because they don't come cheap.
Yes.
But also it's quite therapeutic in its own way. Figuring it out, like getting YouTube on and how to wire a plug or how to wire a socket.
I was so proud of myself when I changed the LEDs of the bathrooms in the soffit, like literally getting it out, removing the China connector and putting in a new one, and
That's
putting it back in and putting it neatly, and getting the wrong light.
You get a dopamine hit when you fix it. Don't tell me that.
Yes.
I come from a background of building computers. I've always been good at building computers. So electricity wise, I could understand how to do it, but I was always scared, even fixing something in my car. My dad's a certified mechanic, so I just go to my dad.
Yeah.
And my brother is very good with stuff like that as well. So I kind of rely on them. They're my crutch almost.
Yeah.
But like sometimes I try and do it myself just to figure out if I have
100%.
the mental 100%. Space for it. But still, so let's go a bit back into your career now. So at what stage did you think that you know what, I should go into? Let me try give it Eurovision a shot, because at what stage does someone who is now, first you started singing as a hobby and the side thing, and you realize that you've got a knack for it, and people encourage you, great, you go into studying,
right,
and you start building that skill set. Then you go into studying where you start really, really honing that skill. But at what point does an artist feel confident enough to put yourself into the limelight of the Eurovision contest? Because have whatever opinion you want about the Eurovision contest, and I have my own, I will not discuss. It is still a very widely followed contest,
yes.
and it can make or break an artist.
Okay, I'm not going to comment about the last part.
Okay.
The make or break,
right.
Because I believe that even after being broke, if something breaks you, you can still, like with enough dedication, with the right, I don't know, like let's say you lose your reputation as a singer because you've done a really bad show or you've done something, but then if you write some really good songs and you record them well and they reach out to the right people, you could still potentially rebuild. But that's a whole other argument. Like there's
no, that's fair.
So my Eurovision journey, I would say, I remember when I called my vocal coach to start training to be a singer, I told him, and I had completely forgotten this, but he told me this years later. I apparently called up Brian Sheffi and asked him, because I want to go to Eurovision and I want to have a really good voice. I don't want to just go and like sing like an idiot. I want to be really good. That was what I told him. I forgot I said this, but he told me this. And so like Eurovision was always on my in my I don't know, hopes and dreams as a kid. I mean, every year watching Eurovision with other pizza or Chinese or sometimes both.
It was a big family event.
It was a big family event, and it still is in a way. So for me, when I think about that 10 years before I went to Eurovision, I was with my family watching Ira Losco go to Eurovision with Seventh Wonder. And I don't know, like 5 years before I went to Eurovision, I was in Ireland watching Eurovision, and Morena had been to Eurovision with Vodka. Or like, I don't know, 8 years before I went, there was Julu Ludwig singing On Again, Off Again. And I'm with my friends watching it in the living room.
Those are major landmarks in my childhood you're mentioning.
Right?
Yes. Even though I was never a fan.
To be less than a decade a part of that story is something that, to this day, it's been 11 years since I did Eurovision.
Has it already?
Yes, almost 12 now. till this day, I still can't believe that I am a part of something, of the history of something that is so dear to me.
I
You know,
mean,
like,
it's imprinted.
no matter how many years pass, 2012, Malta was represented by a song that I wrote, and I sang the song that I wrote. So when
That's pretty cool.
you know what I mean? Like, you know, when they start playing Eurovision memorabilia, Eurovision memories in Malta, and they're playing them chronologically, every year they play This Is the Night, because it is a song that represented Malta and Eurovision. So when they go back all the way to the 70s and slowly start making their way to the modern times, when after 2011 there's 12, so, and they play my song, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
every time, like this year when I went to watch the Busker, when I went to watch Eurovision and Busker won, before the show they were playing all the songs.
They're a good band, huh?
Yes. And and I remember I was with my friends, and then they played This the Night. They're like, you know, the camera was on me for a second. It's like, a few years back, they had done, the singers of the competitors of that year had sang a lot of Eurovision songs, Maltese that represented.
Okay.
So, and another singer sang This Is the Night. You know, so it's like, no matter how much time goes by, you're a part of it. Why am I saying this? Because you asked me about Eurovision and how I got to sing at Eurovision. For me, Eurovision was something, a family thing, you know, something that in my head at the time, every singer aspired to go to Eurovision. And when I came back from London, I had done a whole year of working for Ryanair, but also singing in pubs and bars and clubs, and I had done master classes for musicals.
What kind of reception did you get in the British pubs? Because I'm pretty sure it's different for, you know...
Reception, what do you mean?
As in, how were you received by, you know...
Actually, very well.
Yeah.
But I had been living there, so I got used to the culture, the jokes, the humor. Like, I find British humor a lot funnier than American humor, for example, personally.
It's drier, yes.
Because I was there. Like, I understand it. I understand the sarcasm, you know. So I could relate a lot more when I'm performing. But when I came back, I was like, listen, if I managed to, in the year and a half I spent in London, get into this scene, I was making an extra income from it, blah, blah, blah. I'm sure that in Malta somehow I can. So I was like, okay, I'll just send a bunch of emails to a lot of people and go out and meet people and, you know, tell them I'm a singer. I want to start singing on TV, basically. And I got asked to be a backing vocalist on a TV show on TVM. This is 2009. At the same time, because I was on this show, Eileen Montezine was doing a singing competition, and she was on the lookout for singers. And, you know, like being a new face on a TV show, she asked me to compete in this festival, in this TV show. And during that time, I was always one of the favorites in this. Ironically, I was on Favorite TV. I don't know why I just said that joke. It's a stupid joke. But I was like always one of the favorites in this competition. I didn't win this competition, but during the time that I was on the show, I met a singer called Priscilla. One of our tasks was to call an established singer and ask them to do a duet with us.
Right.
And I was the one who didn't manage to get a singer because I didn't know many people. I just moved back from the UK. I wasn't in the scene. All the other singers were somehow
established.
They weren't established, but they were people who had studied for years with teachers. They sang in a lot of festivals. I never competed before this festival, this TV show that Eileen Montezine was doing. So then I was the only one who didn't manage to find a singer, so they gave us a list of singers who had agreed to be like a Stepney just in case. And I remember I called up Priscilla because I knew who she was. She was a vocal coach. And I called her up and I told her, my name is Kurt Calleja. I am a singer on this competition. Would you be interested in singing a song with me? And she said, Melale. Melale means yes, of course.
For our international audience.
And you know, she said yes. We met up. We did Come What May from Moulin Rouge.
Oh, nice.
And we won the round. So I was the one who didn't get the singer the way the rest of the people did. But I was also the one who ended up winning the round. And someone saw us singing together. Our voices blended really well, and they offered to write us a song as a duet in Eurovision. This was 2 years before I won.
Right.
That was my debut in Eurovision. Not many people remember it.
I don't.
Exactly. And it wasn't my best work. That was my stepping stone into it. Yeah, I learned a lot from Priscilla. She had been in the scene for a while at the time, and I obviously learned a lot from her. And then sort of a few months later, Sammy Gallia, the guy from Phoenicia, the pianist from Phoenicia, had asked me, because then he saw me years later. We're talking about 3-4 years later. He saw me in Eurovision. He saw me being present on a few TV shows. He said, listen, once a year I send a singer to represent Malta in a festival in Venice. Would you be interested? I'm like, where do I sign up? Like Venice, hello.
So you've been to Venice then?
Yes, I've been to Venice 4 times.
That's my favorite place to go.
I went to this festival, and I won this festival in Venice, during which I met a Swedish writer, a Swedish composer, but he was there as a vocal coach with his students. We started talking, just like because he was a really cool guy, and whilst I was there in Venice, the regulations of Eurovision at the time was the first time that you could have a foreign writer write a song for Eurovision. And we were laughing, and I thought, imagine we write a song together and we will go to Eurovision. We wrote Over and Over together, which was my debut as a solo artist in Eurovision. I got 3rd place with it. And a year later, we wrote This Is the Night, and we won.
And then you ended.
This is like in a nutshell.
What is it like to sing in the Eurovision? As in, like, obviously the process of I think you become an overnight celebrity almost, because all of a sudden you're launched into the international scene.
Yes.
Even though if it's for a limited amount of time, because then obviously once the concert is over, then it's up to you whether or not you continue
100%
to tour. But how did you find that transformation?
I mean, I think at the time, as a 22, 23-year-old, I was more focused on the fact that I am living a dream, and that everywhere I went now, people knew who I was, that I proved myself to the bullies at school, that I proved myself to the people who said you can't make music a living. And I lost track of why I was doing music for a long time, even during the Eurovision process. It was all about feeding an ego. It was all about feeding this. Now I proved myself, now I won Eurovision, and I'm set for life. That is what I genuinely thought at the age of 22, 23. I mean, everywhere I went, people knew who I was.
How did you deal with that? So how does that feel for you? Like, how did it feel then, and how does it feel now? Maybe that people still recognize you. Even more so, I think.
It was, so there was a bit of a love-hate. So I believe in manifestation, right? We've spoken about this, and when that happened, when I lifted the trophy of Eurovision of Malta, it felt like I had already done it. It didn't feel like it had just happened. It felt like I was reliving something. It was so strange, because I remember being on stage at MFCC, being given the trophy. I lift the trophy up like this, and it felt like I had already done it. So in my mind, I was like, what's happening right now? Like, why am I feeling like this? Why is it that I'm lifting the trophy? I've actually just managed to achieve one of my biggest goals in my life, and it feels like I wasn't aware of these things yet. And I remember the next day, I just wanted or treated myself like I'm a normal human being. I am a normal human being, but I'm a recognized person. But my family and I went to a Sunday buffet the day after I won, hope, like in my mind, I'm like, I'm going to go there, I'm going to eat a huge meal and then just go to sleep. And for a good 2 hours, I just couldn't go to get a plate of food because children were coming up for photos, people were coming up for photos, the management of the hotel were coming up for photos, and like phone calls from friends and family and cousins, obviously all wishing me well. But I was so tired because the night before I barely slept. I couldn't sleep. I was so excited.
Of course, you have the adrenaline still.
You know, I couldn't sleep till about 6 in the morning. And then at noon, we're at a restaurant trying, I was so tired. At some point, I remember I was going to lose it. So that took a while. That took a bit of adjusting. Luckily, I've got my parents who kept me grounded on the floor. You know, like I remember my dad and my mom telling me, just because you won Eurovision doesn't mean that you are, like, you're still remain humble, remain with your feet on the ground, always be grateful.
It's a good piece of advice.
For sure. Because, and even with that anchoring and even with that grounding from my family, it was very difficult, and at times I didn't manage to remain humble and, you know, like grounded and all that, because so many people are feeding your ego on a day-to-day basis. You know, you're walking in TV studios and everything stops because you just walked in. You know, like you go into a shop that I've been since I was a kid, and everyone stops and it's like, you know, it's like it's an overnight thing. It is insane. It is.
But in Malta,
so surreal,
where it travels quickly.
Yes. I mean, being called from my school to come and say hello to the students, and you know, it's like there's so many things and so much responsibility as well.
Because then you have I don't think it's just a reputation thing, but it's like you're influencing others as well, right? So
automatically.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
It's like even being at work. Like if you're a people leader or if you're a parent or something, you need to be careful what to say and what to do, because the people that put you on a pedestal or that are looking 100%. Up to you 100%. Are going to act like you are.
And so when we talk about this, the reason why I start like thinking a lot about it is because I realize how far I've come as a person. Because so there was a whole 3 months preparation for Eurovision from when I won to actually being there. There was the result wasn't what we wanted.
What were you expecting?
As a immature 22-year-old, I thought I would win.
Okay.
Right?
But why do you think that was a far-fetched thought?
Because
now that you're older.
Because we didn't have. I mean, I competed against Euphoria, right? Loreen, which till today is the most popular Eurovision song of all time.
And I don't follow Eurovision, right? But I remember that song.
Euphoria, till today, is the favorite Eurovision song of all time. And I was competing against that. Obviously, at the time, we didn't know this, but Loreen was already a favorite. I wasn't mentally even prepared to win in Malta, let alone, you know, like we don't have record labels, we don't have certain financial backup, you know, we're a small country.
Do you think that puts us already is it still the case?
Yes.
Does it put us automatically in a disadvantage?
It puts us in a disadvantage. I would like to avoid this subject purely because there's also a lot of politics in it.
No, I can imagine.
Right? But yes, from a music perspective alone, it does put us in a disadvantage because we do not have the infrastructure that aids the singer to perform at his optimum. And to be able to make a decent income from it, to be able to even
give more time,
so even just to sustain it, let alone to actually, you know, make a living out of it.
It's such a common thing with Malta that tends to frustrate me as well. It's not just with singing, but it is with the arts, with football, even with football, right?
Yes,
with other sports, with water polo, which we were really good at, where somebody who's really good at that thing cannot do it full time without having to do something else on the side to maintain,
yes,
you know,
but
living life.
It's not just Malta. We look at Malta because we compare ourselves to the people who made it big time.
Yes, but if somebody in the UK plays for a Premier League team,
Yes.
they don't need to do anything else.
Yes, but there are also many footballers who do not make it to the Premier League.
Yes, and they play in lower divisions, which is fine. And in Malta, we have a Premier League. The people in the Premier League, they also have full-time jobs.
Fair enough. Yes, they don't know the income. Yeah, I get what you mean.
Somebody who
so when you're comparing like with like...
Yeah,
so
if somebody who went to the
Premier.
Eurovision and sang Euphoria, I'm pretty sure she was a full-time singer and she wasn't working any...
You'd be surprised, put Loreen aside, but you'd be surprised how many actual people who won Eurovision actually did not make a lifetime career out of music. Like, it is actually... These were the little things that after I won Eurovision gave me a lot of perspective. Because the year after I won, I was flat broke. I was not mentally prepared for that. I did not know how to sustain my relationships. I did not have the maturity to work daily to build my craft. I was like, at the 22 I was like, I made it, I'm sorted.
That's it.
Like, I'm going to be living off This Is the Night for the rest of my life. You know, and less than a year later, it was not the case. And I couldn't accept it that someone else now won Eurovision. I couldn't accept it that a year after I was at Eurovision, I was on the sofa watching Eurovision again, like 2 years before, 3, 4, 5 years before. You know, I could not accept it. And then a year later, and then 2 years later, 3 years later, I was on this journey, like a downward spiral after that. But I was still invited 3, 4, 5 times a year to sing in Eurovision parties around Europe.
Okay.
So I got to milk that for about 5 years after Eurovision. I performed, if I just to name a few, London twice, Portugal, Denmark, Sweden, performed in Milan, Eurovision, Amsterdam, like, and that's not even half of it yet. So I've traveled quite a bit thanks to Eurovision to perform. And there were moments where I would meet people who had done relatively well in Eurovision, but when you look on their social media, they have very little followers. They do not have a lifestyle that you would think that they have. You know, some of them were like doing part-time work in offices, and like, so it's
interesting that you mentioned.
You know, so it's not. I mean, there was someone, I don't know who. Someone had actually won Eurovision who was just working in an office 3, 4, 5 years later after winning Eurovision.
Which is insane given how big the competition is. Huh?
Yes. And then there are people who don't win, but they make a career out of it. It's just a platform for them.
You use it as a
It's a huge platform.
jumping pad. It is a massive platform.
Yeah.
I mean, what are they called? The Italian band that won. They're like...
Yes, but Maneskin were popular before.
Yes, because they were already set.
They became bigger after Eurovision, obviously.
And the guy who sang, what's it, Sam Ryder?
Yes.
Fucking what a voice, man.
Sam Ryder was popular through TikTok during COVID. I mean, talk about someone who took advantage of COVID, right? He created these TikToks, became really famous. He was an automatic selection for Eurovision.
I feel like the guy just hid his talent until he really perfected, because this guy has a voice that
Freddie Mercury, man.
Like I was gonna say, it's it is Freddie Mercury levels of awesome.
Yes.
And then he wrote Tiny Riot. I don't know if you listened to it.
I haven't. No.
Listen to it. It is awesome, guys. Listen to Tiny Riot. He wrote it before Eurovision. And I was really pleased to see him, even though, again, I don't really follow the Eurovision scene, but I saw him and with Spaceman, and it was such a good song. It's a shame, unfortunately.
There was the war, and they had to.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a shame there was the war, but also the UK is not really liked as well. But, yeah, but even though the UK wasn't liked, it still came second.
Yes, it got second, and again, it was the song that should have won.
Oh yeah.
But as a
I think it was more of a gesture of...
it's a gesture. That's the word that I was looking for. It was a gesture that, you know...
But what a voice. What a guy. And he's like such a nice... Like, you can tell he's an actually genuinely happy guy. But I'm sure he was a rock singer for sure. Like, you can tell his...
Phenomenal.
Salto, insane, absolutely insane. But no,
I met him.
You met him?
Because he did a concert here in Malta in July of last year. And
yes.
I was one of the supporting acts. And we had a really good conversation. He's vegan. He is very spiritual as a person.
Oh, I can tell.
Very eccentric.
Yeah.
You know, like, yeah. He was a nice guy. Like, I had a really good conversation with him.
No, he looks like a guy I would totally hang out with.
Yeah.
Part of being is bit, I love barbecue too much. I'm sorry, Sam.
It's a big
but
mistake.
We can still hang out. How did you? So you said obviously that after the Eurovision, then you struggled and you were in a downward spiral.
Yeah.
What did it take to get you back into songwriting and back into your musical career? Because that must be harder. Because for you, you've reached a pinnacle with Eurovision back then.
Yes.
And then you realize, oh shit, this is not enough for me to like just chillax now and take it easy. So what did it take then to take the next step in your like in your singing career as a performer?
There were a lot of things that happened in a 10-year span between Eurovision and last year. But I would say that the top things that happened was, first, I had to be stripped of my attachment to Eurovision, to my identity as an ex-Eurovision winner.
So you had to move away from it, like as in...
Move away, not in a sense where I'm ashamed to talk about it, but in a sense where, like, it's done, it happened, congratulations, like, you
pat
know,
on the back.
pat on the back. It's been 5 years. Move on, right? So there was that. There was the fact that, do you still do you still want to sing? Do you still want to be involved? Are you ready to make the sacrifices? Yes or no? At the time, I wasn't. I was like, I'm done. I put all my equipment on Marketplace to be sold.
Shit, really?
I was not recording anymore. I didn't accept gigs. I was like, I'm done. This is over. And during that time, when I was very upset, but it was like I had made peace with it in a way. It was like, that's it. Then Warren Bonello, who is the choreographer that went with me to Eurovision and came up with the foot move thing that we did at Eurovision and all that, he was cast in a musical in Malta, and they were looking for a lead role. So the musical was Rock of Ages.
Yes, I remember you on that.
Yes?
Yes.
That and they called me up, and they asked me to audition, and I told them, listen, I'm not the right person for this job.
So you didn't go on Rock of Ages?
No, I did.
You did, right? Okay, because I'm
yes.
like,
no,
I'm sure I remember.
Yeah, I'm just getting to it. I was like, I'm not an actor. I do not have, training as an actor. I hope I can sing. It's like, that was my fake humility, like, I hope I can sing, but it's like, I'm not an actor. And I said, listen, we're ready to give you the training as an actor if you're willing to. Said, but let's start by doing an audition and I was like, I like the movie.
Was it Tom Cruise?
Tom Cruise was in it, yeah, as one of
He was the superstar, the rock star,
the
wasn't
he? Yes. In his drunk...
they sang... sorry, this is my excitement coming in, but I watched Rock of Ages. The opener was Journey, right?
The opener was... the closing was The Journey, Don't Stop Believing.
Was it the closing?
Closing number. Yes.
Well, I remember that.
The opening was, this must be just like living in paradise.
Yes, okay.
I mean,
sorry.
I did this show for
you probably know it.
13 weeks.
Yeah.
Right, because it was the only long-running musical in Malta ever. Usually a musical or a show in Malta is a weekend or two maximum, aside from Panto. But still, Panto would be 2-3 weeks in total.
Gotcha.
This was 13 weeks of doing the same show. I went to the audition. I remember I loved the movie, so obviously I wanted to do the audition. I went to the audition. Me being me, I went really committed, like dressed as a rock star. I took the guitar. I was the only one to audition with a guitar. And they called me out. They say, Kurt, we want you in the show. Like, you as a person who's recognized will help us with sales. But aside from that, we wouldn't have cast you if we don't think you can handle the role.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, you know what? Maybe then this will be my farewell, my last show, my retirement, my final tour. This is how I dramatize things in my head. And I really committed because I really wanted to do a good job at it. Like, I didn't want to fail one note. I didn't want to make a mistake in my acting. I didn't want to, and there's a lot of work to be done in a musical. So at the time, we had a garage in Hamrun, which was huge. And I saw the stage plot, like the architectural design. So I did like squares and stuff, and I created a set out of boxes, not really painting and all that, but just like to place things, right? And I found the actual musical of Broadway. I streamed it, and I would learn my lines, and I would act along on my own, whilst the musical, and I'm learning. That's how I learned my lines, by listening to it. I'm not reading the script, right? And I was so on it, I was so on it. Once they asked me to, for example, I would end up correcting people's lines. Like, that's how much I knew the show. I was helping singers do the harmonies. I was so involved. I got a few shows as like guest performers, so that we promote the musical. And I was so involved in it. I was listening to 80s music all the time. I became the character, right? The character was a lot like me in his own way. He moved to LA to become a singer, worked in a bar. I moved to London to work to become a singer.
You could relate.
So I could relate. I was alone. There was someone that I liked who liked the rock star instead of me. It's like the story of Rock of Ages I could resonate with so well. And by the end of it, so many people had watched this show. So many people who only thought of me as Kurt Calleja from This Is the Night, the guy who does the shuffle move thing with his feet, that when they saw me doing this show, the feedback was phenomenal. It was like, I built a solid base now. I did Eurovision. I went from a few people knowing me to all of Malta knowing me. But I didn't have a strong, like when a big building is like a pediment. Foundation. I didn't have a strong enough foundation. Thanks to this musical, I built that foundation. I was working with a live band. I was working with other singers. I couldn't just do it on my own. I had to have a good relationship with my cast members. Otherwise, the show would not be good.
It's almost like when an artist who made a big hit on the first album releases the second album, and the second album is also good. It's kind of validating that, hey, it wasn't just a one-off piece of success. So,
and during this show, I was wearing a long wig, and I couldn't recognize me really. So people were like, when's Kurt Calleja coming on stage? Like halfway through the show. And then at the end of the show, there's like a gag. There's like a, it's called like breaking the walls. The fourth wall. Where the narrator of the song actually calls me out for being make sort of Kurt Calleja references.
Okay.
And I have to like make fun of Kurt Calleja.
Okay.
So, but then there's like people like, but Kurt Calleja wasn't even in the show. It's like, wait, that's Kurt Calleja. Like, because I had grown 5 years. It was 5 years later. I was different without any facial hair and a long wig. Wearing 80s rock clothes, People didn't know that I could sing that way. So there was a lot of things. And the feedback I got from producers, I started getting good work again. Not just the little bar gig here and there, which I love, but I started getting big shows. I started getting band gigs. I started being trusted to do bigger things that earlier on in my career, between Eurovision and Rock of Ages, I had lost those bridges, And that was 2017. So that like rekindled my love for music. It was like, so this is the trick. Whenever I'm doing a show, I have to really immerse myself into it. And that is how now everything that I do, it has such a strong impact, because I don't do 100 shows, I do 20. But when I'm doing those 20 shows, I am fully immersed in it.
Quality over quality.
Yes. I want to know my client. I want to know what they are looking for from my show. I want to give them my feedback. I want to propose. I want to listen. And then we create something together. And because we created something personal together, then my client who's asking me to sing at an event is going to be happy, and they're going to ask me to do it again. And potentially next year they put a better budget, because, this year they experimented, they tested the waters, and now
they're comfortable.
And then 18, 19, and then COVID.
Yeah.
And then we've
here we are.
We've been like through a whole circle, in these.
What's next for Kurt Calleja? What can we expect from you?
So this is always a funny question, in a funny sense, because it's like no matter what you've achieved, you're only as good as the next 10 minutes. Like what the next thing.
I'm obviously not into showbiz, as you can tell. I don't have the face or the voice for it, but
you're so hard on yourself. Come on.
No, I'm not very hard on myself. I think it's a pretty realistic take. But I had a boss that always told me, you're only as good as your last job, as your last project.
Yeah.
It's true in the corporate world, and I think it's true in everywhere. If you're a restaurant owner, you're only as good as your last menu.
Yes.
It's what unfortunately people are inherently fickle, and they will only remember their most recent experience with you as whatever you're trying to provide, so service, or in your case, performance. So yes, I definitely agree that it must be very scary, because you have to keep being creative.
Especially because Malta is so small. So the island mentality ticks in very easily, including me. I'm from Malta, I'm Maltese. As much as I've worked on myself to push boundaries, I still tend to fall back a bit on the paradigm that living on an island tends to create. So last year when I won Musica with my song Blatarf, I was like, okay, great. I won. I'm over the moon. I get a second chance. 10 years after Eurovision, I get to be in the limelight again with a song that has touched many people's hearts. And I don't just say that as a self-marketing thing. It is a fact. It's officially the most popular wedding song of these last 2 years. First dance in Maltese in Malta. So it's most popular 2 years, 2020 to 2023.
That's awesome. I didn't know that.
People like Freddie Portelli have called me up, and Mike Spiteri have called me up to tell me that thanks to this song, I will be one of them. Whatever that means. It's like, like these songs that will outlive you.
Of course.
So, and as much as that was a nice thing to hear, I got really scared, because I'm like, okay, but now what's going to happen?
Next?
I'm just going to sing in a few more weddings, and then a year will pass by, and then everyone will forget me because the next winner was there.
Is that something that you constantly fear as an artist?
Now I've made peace with it, but potentially I made peace with it because Blatarf has changed how people look at me as a singer and a songwriter. I'm not the 22-year-old kid who went to Eurovision anymore. I'm a 30-plus guy who wrote a song that resonates with a lot of people, right? But still, I was like in my early 30s last year, and I'm like, how am I going to have these highs? These highs are like... And last year I had a lot of big shows, but I was a supporting act for many of these shows because it was the same year that I had won. Lots of commitments were already done, and people slotted me in because the song had made such an impact that they wanted me to be there on the billboards and stuff like that to get my crowd, my following to come and watch the shows. This year, but last year when my band and I would perform as supporting acts, we'd give so much energy that a lot of the organizers of last year put us as headliners this year. So last year I was a warm-up act at Beer Fest.
You opened this year.
This year I was a headliner. Opening act means like the warm-up and then there's the main act. So every night we performed on opening night.
That's what I meant, yes. Right?
But there was a warm-up act, which was my brother, and then my band and I performed as the main act. Same thing at Wine Festival. Last year we were a warm-up act. This year we were a headliner. I was a headliner, a warm-up act for Hathaway, and I was a warm-up act for Marco Mazzini this year.
Nice.
And that
I was so sorry I missed that gig to see Marco Mazzini. I would have loved to listen to, but I learned about him too late.
Yeah. For me, the Marco Mazzini show, so my part when my band and I performed, to this day, is my favorite performance from all the shows I've done in my very humble career.
Really?
It is more powerful to me than Eurovision. It's more powerful than when I won with Musica Musica, because it was the first time in my career that I performed a 1-hour set in front of 7,000 people live there.
And it's your set.
It's my set.
All of your music,
I'm not singing one song to 22,000 people, 3 minutes, and then there's the next singer, right? Yeah. I performed an entire set, my showcase, for 7,000 people.
And it's a physical. There's the physical element of an hour gig.
Yes. I've done a lot of hour and 1 hour and a half and 2 hour gigs. I mean, Beer Fest, there was a huge number of people. Wine Festival was it, but till this day, Marco Mazzini was the biggest live crowd I've performed to, in terms of with a band, my show, and this and the other. So when that was over, it was something I looked forward to since February, when I got the news that they wanted my band and I to perform. Once that was over, I was like, now what? Like, there's always this thing, you know, like...
But that's healthy, no? Like, I think it is...
yes.
It can get unhealthy if you let it consume.
But it is important to take time to celebrate and to relax and to be like, you know what? I've achieved this. Like, I deserve that glass of wine. I deserve that short holiday. I deserve that sitting on the deck chair looking at the sea and doing nothing. You know, like, I deserve to spend some time with my girlfriend and not talk about music and what my next show is going to be, but just listen to her talk about what she wants and about stuff that, you know, or being with my parents and just talk about things that are unrelated to music. But it is also a challenge to consciously do that, because it's such a high when you're on stage and listening to people sing along to the songs that you would have chosen, songs
that must be pretty good.
I mean, look, when 7,000 people were singing Blatarf back to me, like, at some point, my band, I remember just doing the first note, just by that, people were like, they recognized the song straight away, and they're singing from the very first lyric of the song. So I was like, wow, like this is something that I've aspired for since I was very young. I remember watching Bryan Adams play Please Forgive Me and When You Really Love a Woman, and people just singing along with him the whole song. Rod Stewart singing First Cut is the Deepest. People started the song before he actually started singing. Angels, Robbie Williams. Like, people know the whole song. I wanted that for myself, to have a song that I would have written, and I hear people sing it back. And that happened twice this year. I mean, it happened many times when I sing Blatarf, but it happened, the biggest times it happened was when I did this, Marco Mazzini, and when I sang Blatarf with Ira Losco at Musica Musica as a guest, because I won last year. So
they bring you in.
And
Did you meet Marco Mazzini?
I did meet Marco Mazzini. Yes, it's
Was
very,
he
very
nice?
nice guy. Yes, very nice.
I'm pretty sure he's very down to earth. He always
He took so many photos with so many people. He like obviously just continue. He's a musician. He just wants to sing. That's all he wants to do. But he appreciates that he is where he is because of the fans.
Which is true, right? Because ultimately you are at the mercy of the people that listen to you as a creator, and same thing with the podcast, right? Like, as much as I don't do it for the views, like you still want to garner a form of following,
Yes.
so you can work more and invest more in it, because there's still an element of time and effort that not just me, but mostly Lily and the team of editors that the other person. We have two people that edit now, which is great, and we're looking to grow even more, right? But and it's only because of the people that really send, like you said, those little words of encouragement really help.
Yes.
I always get a message here and there like, oh, this episode was really cool, or keep it up, like you're, I really enjoy whatever you're putting out, which is, and it's not perfect, it's not always amazing, the best quality we want it to, because we're both learning, but I can only imagine then taking that up to your scale after you've put in way more years of work and effort into it. So no.
So yes, but to answer your question, I understand completely what you're saying, and it's like it's all a journey. Like, this is my biggest challenge. I am a very impatient person. When I've put my mind to something and I want to achieve it, I get frustrated with myself that because I've done 3 weeks of training, I don't have abs yet. That's how bad and how impatient I am.
I can relate.
Right?
This. Yeah.
But then when I look back on these 15, 20 years or 18 years journey of music and how much I've learned and why things are so natural to me when I'm on stage now, it's because I've allowed myself to make the mistakes in the past.
Absolutely.
So, for example, you asked me what's next. There's a lot. Like, I wanted to. There's an album in Maltese that I'm recording. Because it's not fair that our mother language. I wrote one song, which changed my life, and I do not give more to the Maltese heritage when it comes to songs in Maltese, and I'm loving writing in Maltese. So
is it harder or easier, or is it different?
I think it's a matter of, if you have a good command of the language that you're writing in, then it's all a matter of confidence. Blatar put in so much confidence in me as a singer, as a songwriter, and as a lyricist, Maltese lyricist, that I wrote a lot of songs relatively quickly in Maltese. Then the ones that we chose for the album was a slower process, but I wrote a lot of songs in Maltese.
Do you usually plan your songwriting sessions? Do you wait for them to just come to you? How does it work?
There's no one recipe. Blatarf, I was inspired by a couple who met in rehab. Then I wrote it and all that, and the rest is history. During one of many interviews that I did after Blatarf, I was on a panel of people talking about addiction and blah blah blah, and someone who speaks at Caritas mentioned an expression in Maltese, and from that expression I wrote another song. Once I woke up with a hangover, and I said a phrase in Maltese that really refers to what I did, regretting what I did last night, and this phrase turned into a song. Another song, I was contacted by a jewelry company, and they asked me to write a jingle for a new line that they were going to release, and this word stuck with me so much I ended up not just writing a jingle, but I wrote a whole song. Another song in the album is a cover from Ed Sheeran that my brother and I translated to Maltese. There's no one way of doing things, but yes, the confidence that I had in myself and my ability with the Maltese language obviously helped me, because I'm at that point I became more decisive. Like, the worst thing you can do in life is be undecisive. Like,
Yes.
you never get anywhere. There's
That's
way
true.
too many options.
I heard we were talking about Alex Hormozy before the podcast. He said that the shorter time between thought and action will directly correlate to how successful you are.
Makes sense, because you're either going to succeed or you're going to fail. But when you fail, you learn. And when you learn and you don't repeat that mistake, you become into the habit of decision making, and you're not afraid to fail because, like, okay, I failed. I mean, obviously there are failures and failures, but
I mean, there's failures because of incompetence, and there are failures because of not knowing kind of what that particular subject is, and you learn from it.
That could also be harmful. And,
yes,
you know.
exactly.
But I mean, my point is, yes, be decisive, be wise, learn how to, get advice, but make a decision.
Do it.
Make a decision. Go. Fail often. And
Fail smart, fail fast, fail often.
And fail forward.
Fail forward.
Like that is something that is...
It's true. There's all, even when you're doing certain ideas, I think there are some times where you just need to just take the idea back at the back of the barn and shoot it as well. Like, you need to quickly figure out there is something is not gonna work. Because then there's the cost sink fallacy, right? Where you're just we're in too deep now, we can't stop. No, you can. Like, you just if you're writing a song, for example, and you know that the song is just okay, it started out really well, but I just can't. It's just I'm just gonna scrap it and start again, right? And it happens the same with work projects.
I mean, what you're saying happened to me a few weeks ago with my designer. So, my graphic designer. Like, it's very important to have people on your team who you can feel comfortable with, and express yourself. We were trying to create a logo, for an event, and we had been on it for 2 hours, and there was like there was going a lot of details using a font from my own previous artwork and creating a spin on it. It took 2 hours, and it was just not working for me. And I was like, my God, he's been doing it for 2 hours. How am I going to tell him? It's just not. But I was like, listen, at the end of the day, it's all working. I'm not going to... it's useless doing another hour, 2 hours, trying to get it to work. And then I know I won't push it because I don't like it, or I try to push it and it doesn't work because it doesn't work. And I was like, listen, Joe, I'm sorry, but this is not working.
No, that's fair, right? I mean, you need to...
I'd rather tell you now.
You draw the line, yes, exactly. I agree.
When we scrap it and we start something new.
And then you're just going to end up doing something which is... maybe it doesn't feel like it's you, and it doesn't make sense, so I totally agree.
When it comes to the album and Maltese songs, I think that would be my way of sort of closing that chapter. Not closing that chapter, but it's like there's in Malta at the moment there is a lot of thirst for Maltese music, for fresh Maltese music.
I think so. I think the whole scene changed quite a bit.
Yes.
Because now we're getting, I wouldn't say good quality, or better quality. We're getting more modernized Maltese creatives coming out. Where, because we're used to the Maltese creatives of the 90s, where pretty much it was the same 4 or 5 people.
Yes.
We're getting a lot of fresh stuff coming along, and it's interesting. Like we mentioned the Busker earlier as well.
Yes.
Very, very fresh style of music that they do as well, and
100%.
It's really cool.
So there's that. So that will obviously come up with a live event where we're performing the whole album plus some Maltese favorites and some guest singers at this exclusive event. I hate that word, but like exclusive event. So that will take its own planning. Obviously then from my end, we mentioned the musical earlier on as well. I really, really hope that I will find time to work on it. It's not strong enough as a priority that I just need to put everything aside to write it and do it, because there are other things which have taken my priority in the last few years. But yes, I mean, I really hope that in my journey during this life, I managed to do it, because even the message of the musical has a very impactful message. Like things that I wish people told me at a younger age are in that musical kind.
Do you feel now that you're a bit older, because I do this as well, like you feel that and you sometimes speak like a 20-year-old, and I'm like, like just, and you feel like you want to tell that or somebody, especially that somebody who's got a lot of potential in something, and you just want to try and give them
I mean,
but you also know that they won't listen. Right?
This happens a lot with my younger brother Kevin. Obviously he's 6 years younger, he's in the same line of work as I am, so there are moments where I don't want him to make the same mistakes. And Kevin has taken a lot of my advice on board, not necessarily followed it, but he has taken my advice on board, which is something I appreciate a lot. But yeah, I mean, even simply someone who is 23, 24 years, oh my God, next year I'm going to be 25. I'm like,
I know, I'm going to be 21 next year.
I'm like, come on. But I mean, I used to say the same things. And I say the same things. I'm 34 in front of someone who's 50, and it's like, wait till you're 40. I'm like, so it's all perspective. But yeah, I mean, there's that, and I have a big show coming up next year, which I can't technically give away too much about, but it will be something that I've been dreaming of doing for a long time. It's very tangible. The dates, they haven't been launched yet, but the team behind it are very excited about it. It's a show. People haven't seen me perform this kind of performance, but it's something that the few people that have seen me sing this kind of music have encouraged me to do this show. It will be a good excuse for people to dress up really nicely. It will be a good excuse for people to help a charity of their liking, because through this event there's going to be a lots of big donations coming out.
Awesome.
And it's going to be a show in hope for if everything goes as planned, and normally it doesn't, but if most things go as planned, it will be a show that people will talk about, people will look forward to the year after and the year after and the year after. It will be one way of me creating my own legacy when it comes to music, aside from my original music.
Kurt, I think you've already created your own legacy. So that's coming from me, that is very self-depreciative. Don't do that.
It's not a matter of being self-depreciative, but what I've done so far, I believe, for the most part, what I've done so far is to help myself. And yes, as it goes, then because you learn, you pass on information, you pass on wisdom, you're ready to give advice, you're ready to listen. But this particular thing that we're preparing for next year potentially will be a good opportunity to celebrate music and to have a good time. But the aftermath of it would be to actually then help people financially, one way or another, through the NGOs that will benefit from this event.
It's awesome. That's very good of you, and good for you, and good luck. And I wish you the best. I hope it explodes into something that happens.
Yeah, hopefully.
Every year. Yes,
hopefully.
I'm pretty sure you'll do well.
I have a clear vision of it. Normally, when I have a clear vision of something, it tends to happen. I'm not saying that it will happen for sure, but this is something that I've put so much energy. My team and I have put in so much energy, and to creating it and to coming up with ways how it will definitely work. Marketing team, how to make it inviting, how to make it value for money, because this is at the end of the day, even though there would be a lot of charities benefiting from it, I still don't believe in a free lunch. I don't like it that just because a musician is performing at a charity event then they don't get paid. I don't believe in. I believe that yes, we do a show, everyone gets paid, everyone needs to work hard, and say no to other work to be able to do this show. But the profits of the actual show themselves, there would be a huge chunk of it that would be donated to an NGO. And the only thing I can give away is that what we are planning to do is when people are buying their tickets, there will be, there's drop-down menus. There will be a drop-down menu that you will choose which NGO would you like your ticket really cool. to benefit the profit from your ticket. In which pot would you like to pay?
That's excellent. That's a good idea. That's true. I mean, it will get people more engaged as well. And get more people to donate. That's good. Awesome. Kurt, one last thing before we wrap up, because we've been over 2 hours.
Why am I not surprised?
I mean, no, not surprised either, to be fair. We're both talkers. I always ask this question. If you had to give one piece of advice to the entire world, and to our viewers, which are part of the entire world.
Yes.
So if you had to give advice, what would it be in one sentence?
This is obviously... We could probably go for another 2 hours.
And that's why it's in one sentence.
Fair enough. Yeah, but I could
just go...
Exactly.
Do a Jim Carrey.
I was thinking the same thing. I think mainly is that anything that you do, anything from cooking to cleaning to doing your job to anything that you do in your life, make sure it's beneficial to you physically, mentally, and spiritually. As much as possible, make sure that the same thing will also benefit others in some way. One way or another, make it a win-win situation somehow, as much as possible. And just put love and passion in everything that you do. Because love is an ultimate form of energy. It is not just I love you or I love this but it is a pure form of energy, and it is unwavered. It's a strong. God is in love. Love is God, right? So that is how strong putting love into something simple as cooking a dish or cleaning up clothes. That's how powerful it could be. And passion means because it combines a lot with love, but passion sometimes. When you're losing motivation for something, it's easy to lose passion. It's easy, but so like even if you have to fake passion for a while, but like
fake it till you make it.
Like really engage your, I don't know, like your strength, your focus, your like allow the thought of it to give you goosebumps. Allow the thought of it to excite you and to give you to make you feel a thrill, because that is a high form of vibration, and automatically it will transmit into anything that you do.
Good advice, Kurt Calleja. Thank you very much, and thank you for coming on the show. We're still in a very young age of the show, but you still agreed to come on, so thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Appreciate it.
It really has been my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Kurt Calleja, everybody. Thank you very much. We'll hope to see you soon.
Yes.
In another episode when we have a bigger following and we have a bigger room.
I have no doubt that you'll manage to make it.
I hope so.
Cool.
Thank you.
Cheers.